It's a beautiful morning in this wonderful place that we have to live. We're very thankful for it. So, let's pray. Lord, we just give you praise. We thank you for this beautiful place that we have to live, and we thank you for the freedoms that we can come here and gather together like this for an open meeting. Lord, I ask your blessing to be upon this council. I thank you that we are blessed to be a blessing in everything that we do. We ask for your wisdom, for your direction, for your understanding. And Lord, that you will bring peace to this area and that we will learn to live together in the way that we need to be. Lord, we just give you praise and thanks for everything that you're doing in us, through us, for us, and with us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Fred, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Caramba. Here. Councilman Purdon.
Here.
Councilwoman Carr.
Here.
Mayor Steinmeier.
Here.
Councilman Corey.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Here.
Councilman Forbes.
Here.
Okay, approval of the agenda. 12A is going to be continued until November 3rd. So if you're here for to speak on 12A, you'll have to come back. Okay, mayor's welcome. Hello, I'm Rick Steinmeier, the mayor of Bonita Springs, elected in November. I'm glad to see you're all here. There's people at home watching on TV. Thank you for taking your time to see how we're doing down here in, big old Bonita Springs. Okay, now public comment on agenda items. Number 8A and 8B and 11A are not spoken to at this point.
Yeah, so if you are here, if you're a member of the public and you're here for either of the two rezonings or the dock code amendments, those items will be separate public hearings. So if you have comments on those items, please wait till those items are called.
Okay, any public comments?
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry, we're sorting out.
So,
You want something?
No, at this time, we're just taking public comments on items on the agenda, but those items would not include the two rezoning items and the amendment to the dock code, which is item 11A. Those items will all have separate public hearings later on today.
Okay, no public comment? We'll move along then.
Okay.
Okay, now we'll start with 8A.
This is a first reading and public hearing of a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs to amend the residential plan development portion of the Bayview Estero Bay Commercial Plan Development to increase the maximum permitted building height, add restaurant group 3 and hotel motel uses to the schedule of uses, add 3 new deviations relating to restaurant and hotel motel use, and to modify 2 existing deviation justifications relating to increases in height, and to modify the master concept plan to provide for these changes and provide for an effective date.
Okay, presentation first.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. Jacqueline Getson for the record. So typically with first readings, it's more of a procedural item. However, because we are changing uses, there is the ability to go ahead and allow public comment. What I will tell you is per the green sheet, and I have explained this to the numerous emails that we did receive, that's what we intend to do today is read the title block into the record. We definitely want to hear the public's concerns and comments, and those I have received through email I have responded to, and also let them know that the November 3rd meeting is when staff and the applicant will provide full presentations, and we'll have all the professionals here to answer those questions.
Any changes at this point?
No changes from what was presented to the zoning board or included in the staff report.
So the public comment now.
The public is more than welcome to go ahead and participate, and we will answer to the best we can those questions today. But again, our consultant teams are not here, so my professionals for transportation, outside land use council, David Theriak is not here at this meeting, but they will be in attendance at the November 3rd meeting.
Okay, got it? Public comment, please, on 8A. Come on up to the podium. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. My name is Roy Hyman, and I'm the general manager of Pelican Landing Community Association, which, of course, many of you know consists of Pelican Landing and the Colony is all part of our management team of that property. And just to remind you that Pelican Landing has a marina and a beach at the very end of Coconut Road. We do have a slide I'd like to show, if IT can help me determine which ones are up there.
The pictures that were sent in?
Yes. To give you a better indication of what we're addressing and concerning today. Thank you.
Just hit the arrow keys.
Each
to
one?
shuttle
Okay,
through.
sure. First, let me make a few comments for the record. Again, Roy Hyman from Pelican Landing Community Association. I'm not here to oppose the amendments, but rather to attempt to make the council aware of the impact these amendments will have on the 5,000-plus residents in 3,350 homes that make up the Pelican Landing Community Association, which, as I mentioned, includes the Colony. First, I want to say that the developer, London Bay, is a first-class developer, and we are happy that they will be developing the Weeks Fish Camp into a first-class resort property. Having said that, we have serious concerns about the traffic being generated as a result of the change in uses. Yes,
The
sir.
city does not own Coconut Road.
That's correct. We know that
Okay.
Lee County.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. So as a result of the change in uses, as well as there being a parking lot which will be located right next to our Pelican Landing Beach Shuttle parking lot and directly across from the Colony's entrance, this will exacerbate an already busy Coconut Road, especially during season. In addition, Coconut Road becomes a two-lane road after the right and left turns across from the Hyatt. This amendment, through deviation, will allow 3 driveways next to each other: the CDD office, the bus shuttle parking lot for Pelican Landing, and their proposed parking lot, which will include boat uses where trailers and cars will pull into and out of to get to their ramp and their boat docks. In addition, a 7,500 square foot restaurant for the public and the possibility of a hotel will mean even more trips down this road than the previous zoning approval. We have read the traffic statement by the traffic consultant, who referred in his report to a previous study that was conducted by the Village of Estero in 2019, prior to any defined project on this site. In addition, there will be potentially up to another 200 units being built in the Colony by the Ronto Group, and another project, Coconut Landing, broke ground this year for single-family homes on Coconut Road. We would hope that these issues and concerns will be addressed as the project moves on to the development stage if the zoning amendment is approved. We have not addressed environmental concerns, clean water, runoff, and whether or not there is a marina building and its impact on the water with gas, etc. What struck us clearly is the need to address the real traffic concerns that are obvious and imminent, as well as their main access to the property, which appears to encroach on Pelican Landing's property. We cannot even imagine the impact of construction traffic on this 2-lane road. Thank you for allowing our concerns to be heard. We urge you to delay your decision until these issues are addressed by the applicant. I want to show you some pictures of our area. This is Coconut Road as you come and you make a right out from the Hyatt, and then you make a left onto Coconut Road, which is a 2-lane road. I'm doing it, but it's not going.
Are you gonna take some more time?
Just 2 more minutes, just to show you a couple pictures.
Okay.
Because I don't know how many of you have been down to Coconut Road to our marina, but it's a 2-lane road, and during season it gets extremely busy. That's why we have a bus parking lot for shuttles, and we have proposed 2 parking lots that get closer to the marina so that we can shuttle people closer to it and take the traffic off the road. That application is before the staff right now. So this is the overall picture of Pelican Landing on the
You're gonna have to get a microphone or something.
I can yell.
No, for the, I'm sorry.
This is the Colony, and here is the parking lot that they are proposing. Thank you. That they are proposing. Here is our bus shuttle parking lot, and here is the CDD offices for Bayside and Bay Creek. So here's Coconut Road, and then when you get to, this is 2 lanes with a left lane possibility lane into the colony. And then this is the turn that I said after the Hyatt that becomes now 2 lanes. This goes to the vacation club, the Hyatt Vacation Club. And this is the 2-lane road that has no left-hand turn, it's just plain 2 lanes. And this takes it right to our marina, and of course, boat shuttles to the beach. And this is their entrance to their property that shows their proposed development alongside of it. And this particular area is what our concern is with regard to encroachment on property that we own, which we'll get to at another time with them. But we do have another picture or 2 to show you, just so you see the issues that we have to deal with. Again, this is the overall plan of Pelican Landing and the colony. Pelican Landing being here, colony being up there, and that is what's going on Coconut Road, which of course you don't own, but nonetheless you can control the development that goes along it because you are Bonita Springs. Estero owns part of the road and Lee County does.
We can't control what goes on that side on that road.
Okay.
Can what has been annexed in. We can what's been annexed in, which is Wheat Fish Camp and Rapport Bay and Hyatt Regency.
Understood. There's the Hyatt. This is the 2-lane road that leads from a Coconut Road that has that middle road, whereas the road after the Hyatt to the marina becomes a 2-lane road without any middle road at all. So we hope that you will take this in consideration and make a decision to help us alleviate some of this traffic situation and some of the issues that we have.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'm sure community development heard you loud and clear. Any more comments? Here we go. Here, come forward.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Jeff Waxman, and and I'm a resident of Pelican Landing in the Gold Crest community. On October 23rd, 2020, you approved the project put forth by London Bay. And during this period, was clear that we had marked COVID restrictions for Floridians who live in this area and did not extensively review this project. It was approved by City Council at that time on October 23rd. Now, I submit to you at that time that well over 50% of the people in the communities of Bonita Springs and Estero were not aware of this project, as the announcements of meetings were limited, people were out of town, and there was barely any discussion, especially in Pelican Landing. This project has great appeal in a large number of areas, too numerous to talk about. But it should go forward after 2 important areas are clearly addressed. The first is the traffic issue and the traffic study. This was taken from a 2019 Estero City traffic study on Coconut Road in 2019. And the projections then were made by a very good traffic group on the 300 units that were going to be constructed in this project. Unfortunately, that's not the complete picture. As mentioned by Mr. Hyman, there are 2 large residential towers with an additional 200 units to be constructed in the colony, and also more development in Raptor Bay and the timeshare, not to mention a public restaurant and a public marina. The projection, although done by a very good, reputable company, has to be seriously questioned. So if a traffic issue is an issue on Coconut Road, then the impact fees that are collected should be earmarked, at least some of them, for the widening of the Coconut Road to the Hyatt.
Again, it's not our road.
I understand that. I understand that. But the second major issue is the concern about the route taken to launch motorized boats and jet skis from the public marina. Again, Exhibit B which is a very hard exhibit to read with the naked eye, depicts these routes. The launch of vehicles coming down this smaller road that Mr. Hyman pointed out, more narrow aspect of Coconut alongside the Hyatt, and then entering the marina about 1/3 the way down this narrow road. You ask why this issue was not addressed prior to October 23rd, 2020, and I think it's easy to understand because of the COVID restrictions as well as the very difficult small exhibit that was put up. So, what would be the prudent thing to do? We need help. We need help from Pelican Landing residents, surrounding communities, to work with London Bay to develop an alternate route down Coconut Road to their marina. Perhaps a turnaround could be constructed where boat owners that could not enter the marina could turn their boat around and come back out and try again when traffic was not as congested. There are other solutions that can be made. So city-going Coconut Road in this type of traffic, Pelican Landing residents as well as Hyatt customers going to the beach is a major issue. And I suggest that we meet with London Bay and Bonita Springs and come up with an alternate plan. And I think we need more time. I don't think in 2 weeks we're going to be able to iron this study out, and I think that we need to get this problem solved before these issues become a major problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Thanks for coming.
yeah, my name is Bob Luce. I'm a resident of Bonita Springs, and I am also the president of the Colony Foundation, and I'm here on behalf of the Colony Foundation. The Colony Foundation Board has authorized me to speak on behalf of the 1,077 residential units in the colony. As mentioned before, there's going to be another 200 units built in the colony by Ronto in the very near future. And let's get to the crux of the matter. The crux of the matter is that there's going to be major development in this area. And Bonita Springs has taken the position that they don't control Coconut Road, and therefore they have no responsibility for what's going to happen in Coconut Road. This is not a fair situation for Bonita Springs to take. And the reason why is because you are the only ones that have authority to authorize all these developments. And let me tell you, these developments are just not the 200 units that are going to be built in the colony and the 300 units that are going to be built in what was called the Weeks Fish Camp.
Just a second. We do have
Mr. Mayor,
control what happens in the fish camp. Okay? The city has control of that property. That has been annexed into the city. Coconut Road is not part of it.
I understand.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes, sir.
I would recommend that these are technical issues that should be addressed at the end or by staff. And the debating time is taking out the public's comment time.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so let me start. There's going to be major developments that are before you. You've got the timeshares, which is not even half built out yet. They can build out. That's all going to be using this road. You've got now the two towers. It was supposed to be one tower, but because they used this one big building, they're going to have two towers with 300 units. In Raptor Bay, they have the ability to build 4 towers, and if they use the same architect, there will really be 8 towers. We are talking about a monumental amount of traffic that is going to be put on Coconut Road. You have to sit down with Estero and with Lee County and seriously work out how this is all going to work. It is your moral responsibility that you cannot unleash all this traffic on this road and say it's not your responsibility. Please take the time to sit down with Estero, sit down with Lee County, and figure out this massive plan. This is a massive undertaking that's going to take many years, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir.
Morning, Mr. Mayor and council ladies. My name is Jim Hollers. I'm also a member of the Colony at Pelican Landing Foundation Board, and I've been asked by the board to join Bob Luz in making a statement to you. I think many of us have heard the old joke that a conservationist is the person who already has their house in the woods. And I think a lot of those folks down here would be next to your golf course and next to the beautiful ocean out here. That's an important part of our life, and the environment is an extremely important part of our life. This new development that's taking place is going to place great stress on the life of people in Pelican Landing, in the Colony, in the Hyatt, and in the entire Raptor Bay area. I think that the difficulty we have, as Bob just said, is that the feeder of the traffic that will cause the jam on Coconut Road is going to come from Bonita Springs, of which I'm a resident. In fact, when Estero was formed, I specifically petitioned to have, my house was halfway in, I slept in Bonita and I ate breakfast in Estero. So I asked to become a part of Bonita Springs. I'm one of those little juts you see on the map there. And I love Bonita Springs. It's a great town. I've been here 25 years, and I hope to have another 25 years here if I make it that long. But this is going to be a very, very serious issue. And I think I don't need to remind you of your obligations. You're all intelligent people and you know them. But I can repeat them. Your first obligation is to the citizens of Bonita Springs and the current citizens of Bonita Springs. We are the people here now. We are the conservationists. We have our place here. And it's important that the impact of the whole project be assessed very carefully because of the convoluted ownership between Lee County, between Estero, and between Bonita Springs. We're going to throw a lot of traffic on that road, and I've lived through a few hurricanes down here, and that road, which is where, by the way, the repair crews usually stay in the Hyatt when they're here. And that road with all the traffic on it as an evacuation route, if there are a lot of senior citizens in the area. Apparently there won't be as many as we thought there would initially be because it's changed, the concept of it has changed. It was going to be primarily a senior citizens development. Now it's going to be residential. It's going to be a lot more traffic, and I fear that we're going to have at some point, sometime, something's going to happen where we're going to regret it if we don't find a way to lighten the traffic load on that specific area, going from the entrance to the Colony to the entrance to the Hyatt and then the entrance to Week Fish Camp. That's where all the action is going to be. So I urge you to keep that in mind. I think it needs some coordinated work between the three entities. And I know a number of you on the council, and I know that you think in terms of the welfare of all of your citizens and the larger area of Lee County. And I urge you to please represent us well and try to avoid what could be a pretty serious problem for us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Thanks for coming.
Good morning, Joseph Winterberger, 3520 Tassaflower Court in Bonita Springs. I think everybody understands what the problem is. These gentlemen came up, they told you what it is. I don't think there's anything you don't already know. My personal belief is it's a great project that they're putting together at London Bay. That Weeks Fish Camp has been a disaster for many years. I'm not telling anybody anything new. The traffic problem, to me, is the issue that everybody really is concerned about. Most importantly, I'd like to address a practical nature of what's been put forth, especially when it comes to the ramp access for public access for boating. That's been something that's been desired for many, many years by the public, and I think London Bay has taken that into account, as they should. The government agencies, anytime anybody for the last 10 or 12 years wanted to permit something, that subject always came up. What are you going to do about public access? All you got to do is drive around town. You see the little signs all over town, keep Weeks Fish Camp open. And I think they've done their best to do that. The problem occurs, practically speaking, if you've ever been to a boat ramp, you look at the plans that were put forward, how many boats can you get in there to launch? Just go down to any of the public boat ramps in the area, you're going to see chaos on a weekend. There's a tremendous high demand for access to the water. There's been a lot of additional boat registrations sold by the state of Florida, and there's no place to put them in. What is the solution? And I believe that potentially there's something that can alleviate. You're never going to stop this demand from flowing in there on a weekend. But what happens, just picture what happens. You've seen all the pictures that were just presented. When you get these boats coming down in the morning or in the afternoon when they're all looking to leave on trailers, waiting to get in there, stacked up along there. Somebody says, okay, I can't wait any longer. I got to get out of here. Where do they go? How would they possibly turn around? There's no, they can drive down to Pelican Landing's dock. There's no place to turn around down there. You're stuck there. So practically speaking, what could be done? And I think if you went back into the records, Lee County owns the road. Lee County was approached years ago by WCI to accommodate the same subject that we're talking about today, and they proposed a turnaround right there in front of the access to go into the proposed ramp or to, the new development and all these other things. But without a turnaround there, no one can get out pulling a boat trailer or a truck trailer or anything. So my suggestion is work with Lee County, the planners here. I've been to meetings 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember, getting too old. I was asked to go to some meetings in Estero where they had town planners sitting there talking about the initial stage of this development. Every single one of them, without exception, said, this is great. It's the only problem is, how are you going to get boats in and out of here? It's going to be a serious problem. So work with Lee County, these gentlemen here, London Bay, everybody gets together, and possibly you can come up with a solution here. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. Glad you're here.
My name is Judy Nyhart. I am a citizen of Bonita Springs, and I applaud the results of my city's quest to get water access to Estero Bay for the public. I launched a pontoon boat at Weeks Fish Camp many years ago. Launching a boat is a many-stepped evolution. After studying the Bayview plan for this boat launch, I can see 4 different and serious congestion problems. Number 1, the launch ramp. The first boat launched in the morning will likely be 2 fishing men who come very early and find an empty ramp, launch their boat, park their trailer in the empty lot, and ride away. Launching a boat is not easy, as many are not used to backing up a trailer. This ramp is very narrow, which will make it more difficult, but that comes into play later. Number 2, the second congestion spots are the parking lots. As the day goes on, the popular site gets crowded and the parking lots are backed up with trailers. When a boat launches now, the trailer has to back up, if it can, when the line behind it provides room, then must squeeze between others in the waiting line to find a parking space. If the 15 spaces are full, he then has to go back Coconut, take a 90-degree right turn, then a 90-degree left turn, and then travel further to the overflow lot. And what about the people using the parking spaces at the marina to go to the little park at the entrance to the harbor? That parking lot will fill up fast, and cars will have to maneuver around all the waiting boat trailers that are in the line. Number 3, the third congestion spot deals with the launched boat now floating in the small harbor. There are 10 temporary tie-ups. The easy way is to tie up there to wait for the trailer driver to come back and get in, and you can go away for your entertainment. But who's going to monitor those 10 slips? How long will you sit there? Will they be used for the ship's store and the restaurant as well? What if those slips are all full? Then the boat will be circling the harbor waiting, and then we'll have to find a way for the trailer driver to get on board. That harbor is not very, very large. When that harbor fills up with circling boats, there's a possibility of damage to the paying customers whose boats are in slips across the water from the launch. Then there are the jet skis and kayaks. They have smaller footprints, so will they try to jump the line of waiting boat trailers to put theirs in the water? Once in the water, they have to find places for their cars to park as well. I see a harbor full of circling boats, small kayaks, jet skis, all waiting for their passengers. This is an accident waiting to happen on a daily basis. But wait, that fishing boat that went out first thing in the morning is back. They are waiting in the harbor to unload the trailer driver if there's an open space in the temporary tie-up. Then the driver will hoof it to the car with the trailer and try to get back in line to pick up their boat out of the water. Will those who have been waiting for an hour let his empty trailer get in line? If a later boat retrieval involves a trailer in the accessory lot, that driver will have to wait behind the whole line of waiting trailers to get the boat out. Meanwhile, the boat is circling in the harbor with all the others. And the fourth congestion spot you've heard about a lot is on Coconut Road. I can envision a long line of waiting cars with boat trailers. There's no way from out there to see how long the line is. After an hour or so, some may give up. But wait, how do you do a U-turn with a boat trailer on a 2-lane road? And if there are cars parked on that road as well, It's just impossible. When that line of waiting trailers blocks up the road, the buses from the Hyatt Residence Club timeshares and Pelican Landing buses that pass by every half hour through the season will not be able to get through at all. Yes, it is important to have access to the water, but it needs to be thought through thoroughly ahead of time to avoid problems, headaches, and accidents going forward. This design does not have enough space.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay, what do we do now here? We're gonna-
I move to have it to second reading.
Second.
Any other comments from the council? I think the public has made themselves very clear. Call for a vote. Amy?
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
No.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Okay, motion carries. We've moved it forward.
The next
Okay,
i-
Mr.
Yes, sorry.
Attorney.
Next item is a first reading and public hearing of a zoning ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, considering a request to rezone 4.19 plus or minus acres from residential to family conservation TFC2 to residential plan development RPD to allow a 132-bed assisted living facility located at 9726 Bonita Beach Road, Southeast, Bonita Springs, Florida, and providing for an effective date.
Good morning, Mary Zizzo. Again,
morning.
this is procedurally an opportunity for additional public hearing to be heard at this time. Staff and the applicant will provide their presentations at the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay, public comment on this item?
See none?
Motion
Move to second.
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 Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we move on to the consent agenda, which the staff has diligently put together, and I move we accept the consent agenda
Second.
and have a second. Any other comments? Let's have a vote.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes? Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
The motion carries. At this time, I'd like Arlene to come forward.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Brenda, would you come forward, and Lisa as well? Thank you for giving us the opportunity to recognize Brenda today. Brenda's been with us for 15 years.
15. I'll give you these now. There you go.
And if you ever wonder who double checks, triple checks, oh, let me, yes, congratulations. If you ever wonder who double, triple, and quadruple checks our hurricane reimbursement forms, our COVID reimbursement forms, any invoices that come in that are related to that so that we can truly recapture those funds for the city, you're looking at the lady who does that right here. So we greatly appreciate that very much. And so, Brenda, 15 years of service is presented to you today, as this is the 16th day, on the 16th day of October, 2021, in appreciation and recognition for your service to the public and to the citizens of Bonita Springs. And sincerely signed by our mayor, Rick Steinmeier, and myself, Arlene Hunter. And I greatly thank you for your dedication to us and your willingness to always take on new and entertaining things that come our way. And with that, I'll let Lisa say a quick word too.
Yes, thank you, Brenda. She came to us from Michigan, a new arrival. We were lucky she was with the government up there. She's just been outstanding in so many facets, administration, finance, grant, and we just greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Bonita has talent.
could do a little contest at every meeting. The next item, Mr. Mayor, is a second reading and public hearing of an amendment to the Bonita Springs Land Development Code, Chapter 7, Environment, Natural Resources, and Marine Facilities, Structures and Equipment, Article 12, Dock and Shoreline Structures, providing for conflicts of law, severability, codification, scrivener's errors, and modifications that may arise at consideration of public hearing and an effective date. This is the dock code.
We have a presentation by Community Development.
We do.
Yes. Good morning, Council. My name is Laura Gibson. I'm the Environmental Specialist with the Community Development Department. And you may recall I did bring these amendments back to you back in June for the first reading. Some amendments were done by the city in 2014, about 7 years ago, and we have identified more changes needed based on recent permit requests and input from dock contractors in the area. We researched and compared dock and shoreline regulations from other municipalities and jurisdictions in South Florida and worked and regulatory agencies, and worked with the city attorney also to form these amendments. We have simplified some text, removing the application requirements to the application itself, removing some redundant text as well. Here are some examples of why we want to make the language more clear and concise. We want to clarify areas that constitute what we call a terminal platform of a dock, which is where you would actually park and store the boat, moor the boat, and access the boat, to clearly include a marginal dock and one structure per single family lot. So large marina style docks are not built in these residential single family areas. We also have made some changes for raising the ability to raise seawalls, which is not currently allowed without a variance process, and more allowance for seawalls and artificial canals than we currently allow. We're not making any changes to allowing new seawalls on natural water bodies, which is currently cannot be approved by the regulatory agencies. There are other shoreline protection options like riprap and living shorelines that are available in those cases. We have made a slight modification.
Mr. Mayor and Council, this change that you see on the screen before you, this is a change that we're asking to make today to add one additional clarification into the code. Just want to make sure that doesn't get lost.
Yes, thank you. We're proposing this to provide consistency and continuity across our zoning and development services regulations, to include requirements for the provision of drainage plans as appropriate for dock and shoreline permits in regards to shoreline protection.
I'm going to try to translate that into English. Our land development code provides that when you add fill to a piece of property, you have to show a drainage plan. This would be in a situation where maybe a seawall gets raised up and then they backfill additional fill behind the seawall to make it level, that would also require a drainage plan. That wouldn't be somehow exempt.
Correct. For the dock sections, we're focusing more on the number of slips and potential dock structure and mooring area to guide the dock design, and allowing a combination of boat dock facility and fishing pier, where currently we're required a fishing pier to be a separate structure that's higher than a regular dock structure to prohibit mooring. And we want to allow for lesser dock side setbacks for lots under 65 feet in width, and provide the side setback agreement option, which is currently in place for boat canopies or houses. Many of the lots in Bonita, as you see on this picture, are under 65 feet and cannot meet the current regulation of a 25-foot side setback for a dock structure or canopy or house. but we feel like this provision still protects view corridors and navigability for boats in that area. And we want to clarify we've clarified types of structures and encumbrances in narrow canals and in corner lots where it's a little more difficult to navigate and protect riparian rights. We're allowing for administrative deviation, special exception, or variance to certain regulations if requested. And this shows Estero Bay Aquatic Preserve in the Hatch area where we've added additional standards to protect the quality of life for neighborhoods in regards to dredging projects and water quality concerns such as turbidity, nutrient uptake, and resource protections. We're still allowing vegetation removal for docking facilities and seawalls, and particularly in artificial canals, in accordance with state regulations that currently allow for that. And that's it. This slide just explains the process that we've gone through so far with presenting this to the local planning agency, and also to you. We made some revisions based on feedback from the dock contracting community, and we've completed those to present to you today. And
Yes, question?
Yes.
Go back over the seawall, you can raise it up 2 feet, where, and how about the neighbor's property, not raised 2 feet? Isn't that gonna cause a problem?
Well, we have thought of that and made provision for that, so if it's not the same, then they have to bring it back at an angle, so there's no, to meet that seawall, so there's no conflict, and also making, or they have a return wall option.
What's a return wall?
It's where the end comes back into their own property for a distance. It's usually 5 feet to contain that that area and any fill that would be put there too. So
So if the water, the tide or whatever goes up over top of the neighbor's lower seawall, it'll still get to the higher seawall. I don't know, there's a picture in here, you show a seawall, it's all washed out on the one side. You know, and how do we prevent that?
Well, that's why we are presenting this change in particular. That's the way seawalls were built. I don't know how old exactly this one is, but as you can see, it's very low to the water, and definitely at high tide, the water's coming over. So that's why we're allowing this provision for it to be raised above where it is currently placed.
Is that a state rule, or who controls the height of that, besides us, anybody?
There may be further state approvals needed.
So the state will regulate seawalls, the placement of seawalls. They generally don't regulate height, although there has been discussion about regulating height because retaining water adds some water treatment ability for rain on the landward side. The issue that's come up, I apologize, on this issue with respect to height is sort of, as you pointed out, Mr. Mayor, you have a lot of older seawalls that that have either subsided or have not been able to keep up with the tides, and it's difficult because when someone comes in and replaces a seawall, you obviously want them to come into a new standard, build a good seawall. It's going to last a long time, but there's that transition. And so many communities had for a long time regulated so you could not raise the height inconsistent with the neighbors as a visual issue. But then, of course, what that does is retains bad seawalls for a long period of time. There's no incentive to bring them up so that they're not continuing to fail, because when the water can get over it, they're not doing their job. So what staff has provided for is either retention they either build out the seawall at the higher level and then retain on the edges so that soil and other things aren't coming off the one property. Or secondarily, they have to slope the angles at the edge of their property to match the height as a visual thing until such time as the properties, adjacent properties come up to standard, and then we're slowly but surely raising the level everywhere.
I've seen this, not as extreme as this, but I've seen this washed out on seawalls almost everywhere. How do they drain that? You know, the ground is so high, the water's down here, and it rains, and how does that water get to the Gulf or to the bay without washing out like this does here?
Yeah,
How do
this
we
is
drain this?
definitely a site under construction. And seawalls are one of your structures that are allowed to be built prior to a home, the primary structure on the lot. So this is definitely under construction. It's not a typical finished seawall. We require a drainage area behind the seawall that will capture any rain and stormwater flow, and that can percolate into the ground instead of going over top of it. Most of the time, also, I see on the plans drain holes through the seawall that will allow that stormwater to pass through.
So you're
Site
saying you're
question.
creating a swale on the private property so the water doesn't go into the...
Yeah, so typically the cross-section would be the seawall, the yard sloping downwards, and then a catch basin to allow water to catch and percolate down rather than flow over the seawall or find a new path washing along the edge. And that provides some water quality and retention capability. And then in the event that either in combination with long period of rains or something like that, and there's pressure on the seawall, then they have those, you'll see in those holes, right, kind of in the middle of each wall panel that also allow extra water out should the water be stacking up behind the seawall.
Okay, there's natural and artificial canals, and where are these seawalls allowed to be built?
We're proposing language to make it available in any artificial canals. Right now, that the artificial canals already have to have 50% of the bank seawalled to add a new seawall, but we're removing that provision. Most of the canals are very narrow, and there's not a lot of other more environmentally friendly options to seawall in that case. So that's why we're recommending that. And then for natural water bodies, the rivers, the bay, you can only replace an existing functioning seawall. You cannot add any new seawalls. There's usually more options like riprap and living shorelines if you wanted to add shoreline stabilization and protection.
How does this relate to bamboo property in the seawall that needs to be?
It's already seawalled. It can be replaced.
At a higher level, or?
Yes, it could be.
Could it be removed?
Certainly, if you want to take it back to a natural state, it could be removed. I would definitely recommend some form of bank protection. Definitely with the state that it's in and the narrowness of that.
Okay, Fred, yes, comment?
The question I have is, I'm concerned about where you have an adjoining seawall that's lower, that doesn't get raised. And I think you can raise it 2 feet, you said?
Yeah, that's what.
And I think you said go back 5 foot with a return wall?
I did work with our building official and our engineering staff on this. I'm not a structural expert, so let me read you exactly what.
About the structure, I'm worried about if you're up 2 feet, and you only go this way 5 feet, it looks to me like there could very well be some kind of a drainage problem of water going over on the other guy's property.
That's why we are asking to add that provision to require a drainage plan, especially if it's being raised, so there's no.
Requiring it be sealed by a drainage engineer?
It would follow the same regulations.
It's tied to the same code. It relates back to the site development code, which does require that.
That's the biggest concern I have of all the discussion, the questions the mayor asked you, and I'm not sure 5 feet is enough.
We are requiring,
I think depend on a whole lot of things, how far back from the seawall the house is.
yes,
Way back, you got one, it's not a big issue if it's as close as it can be legally, or if it's already been there and it's a lot closer than we allow now, that you could have a lot of problems. Discontinuity between the heights of seawall. Somewhere when the seawall ends, especially if it's higher, it's gonna be tough. That's my.
it will either be required to vertically transition at no greater than a 45-degree angle if it's adjacent to an existing seawall at a lower height, or a return wall to be used to sufficiently provide for the break in grade at the property line.
45 degrees is steeper than it should be. Gentler is better because that means the water velocity running down it is slower. And the slower it runs, the less erosion you're gonna get on that.
I believe that a drainage review will assure that we won't have those issues, and plus that we require the drainage area immediately behind the wall.
Can we
too.
pull up that drainage language real quick?
Sure.
45 degrees is pretty steep. It's real steep.
Let me ask a question, when the swale, you build a swale, and that fills up with water, what happens to it then? It goes either way, it doesn't, water needs to move. Building a swale on a personal property, you end up with a swamp in your backyard. You know, so it's gonna percolate down, well, water tends to move, you know, you need to let it go to the river or let it go to the bay. Don't you see that as a problem?
Well, it's an effort to allow for more percolation instead of just topping straight over and carrying runoff from the lawn immediately into the river. So, we're attempting to get more percolation or removal of some nutrients and things before they enter
Mayor, you
the
have some
waterway.
comments.
Yes.
May I ask a question? Could you just tell me what kind of professional engineers provided input into these regulations? I assume that we had people look at these differences in height and helped you to propose the regulation. And, I mean, I would assume that they would also consider the unintended consequences. So what professional people helped you to devise these regulations?
Our staff engineer, Stuart Smith, assisted, and also our building official, Pete Haggis, had input on that. There are several other municipalities that have already amended their regulations to allow for this as well.
Are these typical provisions, or is there something different?
As far as the height is, I cannot speak as to how they deal with the transition directly. I'm sure that's available on there.
Just to the Mayor and Council, to the comments that Councilman Forbes raised up, maybe a recommendation would be this, in the proposed section 3-59, subparagraph B, the language that says,
Page?
this would be page 17 of your package. At the top of that page, it says, this is the seawall raising to a maximum of 2 feet above the adjacent seawalls, vertically transitioning at no greater than 45 degree angle, or a return wall is used to provide sufficient break at grade in the property line. We could add a caveat at the end of that sentence that that ties into as required by the drainage plan per section 3-59E.
That's fine. I mean, the thing is, what you've got, what you're looking at in terms of the minimum standards, are designed to accommodate realistic but unexpected existing conditions out there to revise an existing seawall. So nobody's asking to and putting up the pinnacle of design is 45 degrees. However, we've all seen seawalls along Hickory and along Estero Bay that are on older lots, smaller lots. There's not a lot of room to maneuver or to move things around. And so when we're looking at putting these return walls in, you're returning that higher, more efficient seawall that we're allowing, and we're bringing that back down to the existing grade. So if in some of those situations you need the flexibility for 45%, we've asked for that language to be included here so that way it can be used if needed. All of these minimum standards that we're looking at still have to fit in, just like the city attorney referenced, still have to fit into that drainage plan. And it still has to show that the site functions. Mr. Mayor, you had brought up what happens when the water pools in the backyard. If you look in there, there's essentially an exfiltration area that is set up for drainage right behind the seawall. That allows a little bit more percolation. However, as we all know, there's really no elevation changes between a lot of that existing area out there and the bay. So what we look at is, in some of those areas, drainage works to the front of those houses by the street. In some of those areas, it stays behind those houses. So we have a variety of existing conditions. And because we have a variety of existing conditions, property that's been developed over 70, 80 years, this allows us to look at what's out there, to see what's on the adjacent properties, to see what's being proposed, and to allow us to the greatest extent possible, without changing the laws of physics, to move water around and keep it away from where it's not supposed to be. Eventually, it is going to wind up in the bay or it's going to wind up in the Gulf, but we do want it as clean as possible before it gets there. We want it to get there in an orderly fashion. We don't want it rushing over seawalls. We don't want it causing erosion or sediment.
Fred, please.
Yeah. First of all, I think you all can visualize the roofs of most of the homes here, which are pretty steep. I don't know if any of you have ever been up on one of them, tried to walk up it, but it's a 612. A 45-degree angle is a 1212, twice as steep. So I think if we're going to allow this, we need to put in provisions that there has to be riprap and all that on that slope so you don't wash it out, number one. Number two, usually when we have problems, we've had a wet season. Usually the storms that come in with the surges and all that tend to be at the end of the season. A wet season means the water table, especially if you're by a body of water, is close to the surface of the ground. So there's not going to be, at the time we're having a problem, a lot of percolation left in that ground. It's close to 100% saturated. So I think we need to maybe put some language in to address those couple things, and we're good to go. I don't want to cause us not to be able to help somebody out that needs to raise it, but I think you don't want to create another problem by a good intention. I think we could study this just a little bit more. That's my thought.
Yeah, well, I'm, second, Mike.
You know more about seawalls than I do because you live by them. So.
My concern is a number of years ago, maybe 30 years ago, the governor of Florida decided to raise the foundation levels 2 feet above the existing structures. So now you go down an old street and you got a house up here and you got a house down here. And it's caused numerous drainage problems all over the place, like forever. And so I'm very concerned about this. I would like the higher seawall, if you're gonna have a seawall at all. I'd rather see natural, but that's, people won't go for that. The people are the boss. Mike, please.
Well, to your point, in the diagram where it shows the swale, or I don't know if you call it a French drain or whatever, but it's rocks, but it does have a weep hole, so it's not just percolating down. It does have a chance to go into the waterway, so it's not overspilling and it's not going to the sides. So it does have a way out, per the drawing. But my main question was on single family. There's a thing in here for a number of slips, and it says no more than one boat mooring dock with 2 wet slips is permitted. I've grown up on the coast, my whole life I've been on the coast except for a few years in the middle of the state, but I've known many people that had more than 2 boats. So I mean, if they have room on the water, why can't they have more than 2 boats?
That's currently the provision for, along all of our natural water bodies for single family. That's the requirement, and that's based on the Manatee Protection Plan rules. And so we were attempting for, in artificial canals, to bring that into this, under the same, we have more, or as many, if not more, artificial canals, and accessibility to docks as in natural water bodies. So in order to be consistent and with the same regulations, which Lee County has also been pursuing as well, to require that two-slip limit. That's already, it's already a requirement on natural water bodies.
But, so on canals, we're gonna restrict them, you know, they're higher now, but they're gonna be restricted to only 2 boats?
Unless they go through a special exception process. Yes, because they're accessing the same natural water bodies as those on the, already on the, with lots on the river and in the bay.
Laura, with this issue, this change is being driven by changes to the Lee County's Manatee Protection Plan, which is essentially what happens is Lee County and about 12 other counties were mandated to come up with manatee protection plans, and every marine facility, including Bayview boat docks, all these things go through an analysis, and essentially the county gets allocated a plan based on an assumption of a number of vessels. And I believe what is happening is Lee County is now either being required to or in the process of changing that plan to cover artificial water bodies as well, and so we're trying to be in alignment with that plan. Is that accurate? Or am
From my understanding, Lee County itself is in the process of changing their code to be more to fall in line and be more consistent with their
to match
manatee
the existing
protection.
plan?
Yeah.
Well, what happens is they, both sides of the canal put the docks out and they squeeze the middle. And if it's a 50-foot wide canal and you got 12 feet, you know, there's a limit on how far you can go out into that water.
Right, each property owner with riparian rights has a limit of 25% of their water body to extend any kind of dock, including a mooring area, into. So, that's for maintaining navigation of the canal. That's,
What is a riparian right?
Water rights. Like water rights.
Well, to go back to my comment about the number of
I wanna
boats.
know,
Common law. It's
what
like a,
riparian rights are. I've seen pictures with a line going out and it
Mr.
says
Mayor.
riparian right. What is riparian right? I live on the water.
it's water rights. Your property rights for that you own the water. Like you own the air above your house and the soil beneath your house. You own a certain amount of water too. So it's riparian rights are if you own a river or a lake or something like that and it's on your property, you have rights that pertain specifically to those things. So that's all they mean when they say that. So they're talking about your innate rights to the water when you own something is a riparian right.
Well, that doesn't answer my question, but in the newspaper, they never, don't believe the banner.
What-
I'm sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that Councilman Gibson still had the floor and was
Yes, sir.
seeking answers to his questions.
So with the limiting of boats, I don't see how limiting the number of boats that you can have parked there affects anything, because they're not gonna use all 3 at once, or 4, or however many they have. Generally, it's, you know, they might use 1 or 2 at a time, you know, if they have like a son taking one out and the father takes out another. So I mean, just like, you know, we have a lot of traffic around town, but we don't limit how many cars people can own. If they have enough room on their property to have the cars in their driveway and their, you know, garages, you know, we don't limit that. So why would we limit the number of boats that they can have?
like, Derek was saying, that this is the way that the manatee protection plan that we use was calculated as to the number of slips.
I understand that, but I don't understand why we're following that, because
Well,
it doesn't make sense.
And
to me.
if this item does get continued, we can give you more information on that. But what ultimately happens when local governments fall outside of their adopted protection plans is that instead of the local governments being able to issue some of the permits for dockings, or you're gonna have to go to the state agencies, who are, essentially, it's a top-down approach. The federal government lists, an animal as threatened or endangered. They then delegate authority to the state to be able to issue permits, and the state then tries, obviously, because they don't have the manpower and because of demands from property owners and others saying, I want to get permits for stuff, then the state tries to create safe harbors for local government jurisdictions to be able to issue permits within certain boundaries. The manatee protection plans is one of those mechanisms they use to say, you can issue permits, but if you start to issue more than so many permits, we assume that the number of boats, or whether they can actually be implemented, it's just their modeling for how they determine how many boats are out there and how many quote-unquote interactions there'll be with manatees. So it could have, I have not reviewed the manatee protection plan for Lee County. I am familiar with how they work in other jurisdictions. What the impacts could be is if it affects us in such a way that we would have residents of Bonita Springs who have to go through more hoops permitting wise, that could be part of the reason why you want to limit it so that it's clear within those discretionary boundaries.
Grants may be harder as well if we're not within the manatee plan.
Correct. And the thing is, it's whether the limitation of docks is the appropriate measure for manatee safety, or whether it's speed, whether it's people, I don't know. But what has been decided from those that make such policy is that we will be limiting docks. And so as that rule has trickled down, we now fall under that regulation as well, because we are within Lee County. Therefore, we are under their manatee protection plan, excuse me, and that manatee protection plan is based upon limiting the number of docks. Now, I remember, as I'm sure you do, docks don't kill manatees, the bumper sticker. Whether that's true or not, that's not for us to decide at this point. Simply, we've been told this is the protection plan at which we must operate, and therefore, we subside.
And so boat lift is still a wet slip, right?
Mooring is mooring. So whether you get the lift or whether it's in the water, it's still a mooring slip.
I've lived on the Gulf of Mexico for 42 years, and I understand my riparian rights is that nobody can block my access to the water. That protects me from having somebody build a building between my building and the water. This has happened, you got Gulf front property, and then boom, they put a house or a building in front of you, and this is to protect.
I don't know if that's, I've always looked at it as riparian rights are those rights that protect your direct access to the water. And it's not necessarily a view corridor, it's not necessarily ownership, but it is what allows you to directly access the water from your property and those rights that are associated with it. So whether it's through a dock, whether it's through
So riparian rights in Florida are statutorily derived as well as by common law, as Councilman Forms point out. And essentially what they are is the right to access, use water, fish, wharf out, which is docking. That's a specified right. But all those rights can still come with additional conditions. Even if you have the right to access the water of a river to irrigate your plants, you still have to get a water use permit because your rights can impact other people's rights downstream from you, et cetera. So it's where our code could not act, where the limits of our code would be, is to say someone who has primarily, because the issue of artificial canals is completely different. But if someone has a property bordering on a natural water body in the city of Bonita Springs, the city of Bonita Springs would not be able to limit their view, their ability to build some form of dock. Doesn't mean that dock can extend to 50% of the water body's width. It doesn't mean that dock can have 15 boats on it, but there are limits to what we can do that affect those riparian property owners' rights. Now, I don't want to get into a huge debate about it. You saw Mayor Steinmeier, you pointed out that sometimes those are viewed as little dotted lines that go out into the water body. Sometimes that's accurate. Sometimes the lines are at an angle. Sometimes, especially in the place of water bodies that are artificially derived, the water that lies in between two homes on a seawalled canal is not actually a public right-of-way. Sometimes both property owners own to the middle of the canal. So there are a significant number of qualifications to, you know, what your rights are with respect to the water.
I'm specifically looking at the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, now, somebody could put up a volleyball net across my property, and I couldn't get to my water. That's not right. Even on their wet sand, which is misrepresented in the newspapers today. But that's blocking, or I could say, well, gee whiz, they got people who got their furniture, it's blocking me from getting to my getting to the Gulf of Mexico.
Right, but this ordinance that's before us is not dealing with beach furniture or access issues. It's simply dealing with the permitting of structures along canals and water bodies.
Okay, well, I hear this riparian rights, and I have not clarified very well. Okay.
I did the best I could, Mr. Mayor. I'm
Okay, all right, we'll fight another day. We need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any other questions, Amy?
No, I'm all set.
We would need a public comment on this, if there is any.
Okay, public comment?
We have no public.
Seeing none, do we have a vote?
Mayor Steinmeier,
Aye.
Councilman Corey,
Aye.
Councilman Gibson,
Aye.
Councilman Forbes,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba,
Aye.
Councilman Purdon,
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
And I apologize, should have asked this clarification ahead of time, but that includes the change that was proposed to add the drainage plan?
Yes.
No objection.
Okay, should we take a break, or we want to finish up here real quick?
I don't have
Let's
anything.
finish. I think we can just finish.
We'll just finish up?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, number 12A has been continued. Do we have to vote on that or something?
Nope.
Okay. City manager's items. Arlene, please.
Yes, thank you. Lisa, if you'd like to come forward, we'll have the brief presentation and review of your August monthly financial report.
Okay, Lisa.
Let's see where IT, oh, that's it? Okay.
He's right behind you.
Oh, hey, hi. Lisa Robertson, for the record. We're here to present your August financial report. The first slide that we have before you, it's consistent with the format you've seen before, and we like to do that so then therefore you can benchmark and we can easily see trends or anything we need to be concerned of or happy about, which we love to hear. This particular slide looks at your general fund revenue, which is your regular operating revenue, and it presents us with respect to percentages and dollar amounts as a total, as a percentage of the total. These percentages are pretty consistent with what we've had ongoing, which is a good thing. And again, I say it's your regular operating revenue, so you really like to see stable trends with respect to that. What this slide shows, the same revenue sources, general fund, regular operating revenue, and it shows it as a fiscal year-to-date comparison from last year at this time. What we can easily see from this slide is we see our increase in our ad valorem taxes, in other words, our real estate taxes. We know that from the data we've received from the property appraiser, and then also our state revenue sharing. We've been talking about that. The economy in our area and the state really is doing well. We're so pleased with that. So what's really driving this are our sales taxes and things of that nature that we've looked at, statewide trends that we're benefiting from. Lisa, why the doubling?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, what?
May I ask a question, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Why is the fines, local ordinances doubled almost in revenue?
We look at that. It's typically has to do with the timing of collections of things. I could take a look at that specifically and give you a response.
Maybe COVID, they weren't going out and now they can?
Probably.
Generally, the function of our returns on code enforcement liens is a multi-year process. So something that happened, if Tony's staff was to go out today and start going after everybody for something, the reality is that by the time those hearings get imposed, people don't come into compliance or do come into compliance, it may be many years. I suspect that these liens are getting paid as properties are being sold.
Yes.
And there's been a significant uptick in the sales of homes and the value of homes, so people say, well, yeah, I'll pay this huge lien off because I'm gonna make this much money when I sell the house. I think that's probably what's reflected in the numbers.
Thank you.
And that is, historically, we've seen those trends when we have real estate market peaks, when existing homes are turning over. We do see that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The next slide is their general fund expenditures. These are our regular recurring operating expenditures, generally speaking. And we're comparing these to current fiscal year to date to the prior fiscal year to date. We see very little changes. There's one non-operating recurring that occurred last year that was not a regular recurring expenditure, so that's why we're not seeing it there under non-operating. Restricted revenues. As we talk about our regular recurring operating are unrestricted, and
I'm
we're
sorry, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes.
Could you just explain what you just said? Is that, because we didn't have insurance in it, so you don't have a comparison, or what do we not have in that we're not comparing?
other non-operating. In the prior year, there was a settlement cost that was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we
Legal
did.
fees.
Yes, legal fees as well. We did not have that. And again, we listed that as non-operating because it's not regular operating and it's not recurring. So we don't expect it to be annual. Most of our general fund expenditures are regular recurring in nature.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. Restricted revenues. These are revenues that by law are restricted for certain types of improvements or operations. Again, this shows fiscal year-to-date comparison, current year, prior year. What we see are significant changes here are our building fee fund. They are being reduced, and that is a planned reduction that we have approved in reducing the fees. So we actually see that coming to fruition, which we're very pleased about. And then also we see the large increases in the road impact fees collections. Again, that's construction, new construction driven. So we're very, very happy about that. Our cash balances. We like to show you all, historically you've seen 3 years of data there. So it gives you an idea about the trends. The most significant increases are in the general fund assigned balance. Typically that has to do with the timing of our capital improvement projects, because we do pay as you go a lot of those, which we love. We're not borrowing money for those, but we accumulate the money and then it gets expended as the construction happens. So those are our biggest fluctuations there. This is the exciting section of the slides. What we've done here is we're showing you fiscal year-to-date increases over prior year in some of our significant revenues. And we've been talking, our economy is just doing so well. And we're so pleased. Half-cent sales tax, 24% over prior year. Franchise fees, 8%. Local option gas tax, which that is typically very flat, 8% increase. And the impact fee increases that we've seen there. Again, these are just such positive signs for our economy fiscal year as compared to prior fiscal year.
May I?
Yes.
Of longer-term concern that I think the council has discussed in the past is the fact that because we are, our vacant property is being absorbed by construction, we're very happy about that development. But the thought was that over time, we're going to see our impact fees decline, all right? And I know that we had a pretty good year-to-year comparison. Do you have any longer-term trend that you're seeing? Are we starting to see that decline in the impact fees, particularly for roads and things? I know it was an odd year last year, so you can't really compare it that way, but a lot of the a long-term financial planning that has been expressed by the council in the past is that we have to recognize that we're not going to be saved, so to speak, by these impact fees. Are we seeing that yet? Or do you think we should continue to focus on that? I guess that's the question.
Yes, we, each year in our budget process, our Community Development Department dives into all the vacant land, looks at the zoning, and they give us a 5-year projection for that. And we look at that and utilize that when we're looking to fund our capital improvement programs, which is what road impact fees and park impact fees do. So they are projecting in the coming years that it will slow down and that we'll see. And at a certain point, we'll be built out. When we get built out, you know, rarely will you see something, a reconstruction maybe if it changes the use, changes the dynamics so much that it impacts, and it does apply to, you know, gets road impact fees or park impact fees are applied to that. But yes, we are watching that. We know that's going to occur, and we're planning for that in our capital improvement program.
Within our capital improvement program, there's the anticipation of the melting ice cube is what we've referred to it to before.
Global warming, okay.
It's the melting ice cube of the road impact fees for future projects. So that is anticipating the 5-year projection plans that we do as well. Right now, this is very robust. I think we've even experienced a little bit higher than community development originally predicted because of the building boom. But as we've always seen with our revenues and experiences of what happens to us, there's a lag time between the effect it has on us. So we have to continue to project that out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Fred?
Yeah, there's one thing I was gonna save this to the end, but, and I'll get you all a copy, including finance and staff. FDOT's put out a series of graphs on the rate of cost increases in all kind of construction, everything from earth moving, structural concrete, landscaping, because they're into that. And there's a big jump in what it was about a year ago. And it could get worse. And so that's something we need to be aware of too. And I think, as was said, the thing that's making our impact fee income look better than it really is, for how long it's gonna last, is right now houses are selling as quick as you put them up for almost insane prices.
Okay, well, if our impact fees go down, and currently we must have 1,500 units under construction or planned for the city, at least, with the Rapport Bay and all this other, we have lots of units coming on that they haven't paid their impact fees yet currently, right? But the addition to that, once they build the house, then they get to pay us property tax. So they're not getting away with it, and we're not going to lose much on this, I don't think. Thank you.
Well, and I might just add, just to clarify, the melting ice cube is a good analogy, because what happens when an ice cube melts in your cup, it doesn't overflow. The impact fees are to pay for new construction, new capacity. So in a sense, if the city builds out completely, the impact fees hopefully should pay for all of the widening and major improvements that are necessary. And then we go on to the reoccurring revenues for maintenance. What is difficult, and what is particularly difficult for community development and for Lisa to deal with, is you have a set impact fee, a dollar amount, that doesn't change as quickly as pricing. So you may get a huge windfall from a large project, but that money doesn't go as far when you actually try to address the impacts. And you're trying to do all this while trying to figure out, you know where the end date is when you're at total build out, but you're trying to plan and design your projects to get the most money before the end of before you hit that end point. And so it's very difficult for them to plan and to do that. And then you have interveningly from year to year, you know, you sometimes want to use impact fees as an incentive to spur development, so you lower them to lower the barriers of cost, but then you have to pay for it somewhere else. So it's a moving target.
Okay, so a tear down does not have a building fee. It doesn't have an impact.
It generally would not. If you tore down a single family home but then built a duplex in its place, then yes, you would pay an impact fee for the second unit.
So we're doing pretty good. Okay, Lisa?
We are. And this is my least favorite slide, because this one talks about the reality that we're seeing with our communication services tax. And we've talked about this before. It's a statewide trend. We're not an anomaly. Typically, communication services tax from a residential standpoint are, people use those for discretionary spending. We know people have kind of tightened that up a little bit. And then this also, businesses, when businesses charge a credit card, utilize any kind of communication services within their structure, this is where we see that. So again, it's a statewide trend. We just need to be aware of it. 4% is not a significant amount, but we need to watch that.
It'll probably keep dropping.
I think so too.
People get rid of cable TV and it's just the internet
And when they look at their household budgets, particularly, and their business budgets, I mean, they try to look for ways, and they should, how they can save money and still do the same thing. And, you know, with competitive market, yeah, that one has always been a little more susceptible to discretionary spending reductions. What we've taken a look at is the state recently released a financial outlook. We love these reports. They look forward multiple years. They give us a lot of relevant data. We search in there and try to find data points or trends or projections that are relative to us. So let's talk about a few of those. They are saying the revenue estimating data is showing that the state continues to be positive, and they've used the terms overall good for the look forward, which again, very exciting. They're saying that the state's general revenue are going to be projected to be above pre-pandemic for the next 2 years. Again, great news for us. We do still have the risk that sales tax collections may be negatively impacted if people do not continue to return to normal purchasing habits. They're projecting that the personal income in the state of Florida will be up 1.5%, and again, that's based upon hopes that people will return to work. The annual growth rate for this report, solidly above 4%. Couple of industries that they noted that we have talked about today that we've seen and are impacting us in a positive manner, real estate and construction are two areas of operation in the state that have really done well in the pandemic.
Lisa, does Amazon pay sales tax? Anybody know that? Talking about, we get some income from sales tax, right?
We do. We receive our proportionate share for the state and the county. With respect to internet sales, I'm not a specialist in that area. It's been litigated heavily in Florida. So the state is constantly trying to wrangle those and bring those in line with the brick and mortar sales, but it is a constant battle. So I don't want to speak to that too much.
Go up in the air. Yeah.
Well,
no, they pay sales tax,
okay.
but I cannot confirm that the sales tax remittances are done to the locality. I just know that there is a deal with the state that they pay sales tax.
To the city, okay. Hey, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Thank you all so much for your time.
Very good,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just one other quick update. I wanted to congratulate Ellie and Matt. We are getting ready to close on our first 3 homes off of the Quinn Street area. So once we have some more details on that, we'll be able to also work on a press release and media, because we are hopeful that we're going to be able to attract more homeowners as well to participate in the program. So we'll keep you abreast as how that moves along as well.
Very good, very good. Let's see. We got the city manager. We got the city attorney. You didn't have anything. Okay. Presentation. Okay. Mayor and council members reports. Fred, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I would. I'll get over by the microphone. We did have our first compact meeting at Florida Gulf Coast on Friday. Jackie Jensen was there with me representing staff. The main thing that happened, in fact, the only thing that really happened, Florida Gulf Coast University, their water department had laid out an agenda, an action plan for the compact for the next year. And I know that Kevin Rawain, Roger DeJoy, the county manager, myself included, we came to the meeting with the agenda that we don't want anything figured out, any kind of a structure of how we're gonna operate or anything until we get a chance to talk to the 3 existing water compacts. One is over 10 years old down in southeast Florida. It's over 10 years old. Tampa Bay has one, and they have one called the internal compact. Even the guy that's on the steering committee of the Southeast Florida Water Compact said that we should not only talk to them because they've got so many years of experience, but also these 2 new ones, because he said even though they've only been in operation about a year, they're doing things that even they think they want to be able to do. And we're primarily interested in knowing what worked, but more important, what didn't work. What have they done that was really successful beyond their expectations? What things didn't work? That was it. After about 1:30 to about 3:30, then the rest of the other cities that are voting members all joined in. And then Kevin Ruane brought up something. If you remember, there was a grant application that was put in for Charlotte Harbor, by Charlotte Harbor, and it got approved. We didn't support it, and but it got approved. And what they're doing is they're doing grant independent of everybody else, water modeling such things as the LOSUM, the Lake Okeechobee thing. So anyway, that was what happened at the meeting. When we have the meeting where we are going to have one of these water compacts in, I'll let everybody in City Council know through Debbie. So any of you that want to be there as well to hear what they've done and what worked and what didn't work, you can do it. And I think we probably, once we have a couple meetings where they come visit us, we'll probably go over to at least the southeast, because they got all kind of projects they've done. So that's it on that one. The other one that is important to note is that yesterday, I think it was at 10 o'clock, Arlene and Matt and John Domer and I met with Comcast. They came in to brief us on everything from hotspots to 5G system and all that. I would highly recommend that you ask staff to set up one-on-ones for those other council members that want to hear the same thing from Comcast. And this may lead to us also possibly talking to some of the other big vendors in this area. That's it.
All right.
May
I want to,
may I just ask him some questions of what?
sure, go ahead, Amy.
In regard to the compact, did they, I think one of the points that was raised by the council here is that we wanted to be certain that the compact follows the direction of the survey that was given, where the focus on the effort was going to be pretty much on sea level rise, in the sense of protecting the waterfront. In addition to having discussions with these compacts that exist in other parts of Florida, I do think it would be helpful for us to get very familiar with the work that was done by FGCU in Collier County, and in fact, they have a specific proposal that I think they're following, because that's the similar kind of direction that I inferred from reading the original information that came from the compact, that they were going to follow a similar pattern to that study that was done 3 years ago. So those are 2 things that I think we as a city should be aware of, in addition to the things that you had suggested. And I thank you very much for participating. It looks like we have some control over where we're going there.
Yeah, and let me add a little PS, if I could, Mr. Mayor. Number one, Collier County was there, and some of their cities were there. In fact, I met a gentleman from the Everglades City Council. I think Marco Island was there. So they were represented, and they all agreed that this is what we need to do. Secondly, what was proposed by Florida Gulf Coast was water quality. And I brought up that I thought that There were two other issues that needed to be addressed. Roger DeJoy agreed with me, and I think Kevin did as well, and that is flooding mitigation and tidal wave flooding. Tidal wave flooding. Because one of these days, the weather forecaster, when he says you're going to have a 10-foot or 12-foot surge, they've always been wrong. But you've got a lot of other cities that got big surges this year. We just didn't happen to get a hurricane, so we need to be doing that. So the sea level rise really didn't get discussed any significant amount. They do have that survey. They were giving that, but I think the consensus was we want to find out first what the other people have done successfully. What systems have they tried to use that didn't work? Because mistakes are worth as much as ones that worked. You know? So that's it.
Okay, I'd like to chime in on Fred's comments. That on Tuesday, Lee County dedicated $253,000 of CDBG money, which is taxpayers' money, to a study for resiliency. We said there was no money involved, okay, so yesterday, it was $253,000 to eyeball what we've paid $90,000 a year for the last 21 years checking the water quality, and we got $100,000 for all these other different things. Now, has there been 1 ounce of improvement in the water quality in the city of Bonita Springs for the millions of dollars that we've spent so far? And here's another $253,000 of taxpayers' money to eyeball it some more. I don't believe that climate change is something that is caused by human beings. I think it's natural. Every day is a different climate. It's different today than it was yesterday. And I think it's just take the money and run. Yes, sir.
If I could clarify, resiliency that was started in the state about 3 or 4 years ago. Part of resiliency is taking, if we build a road and it's along the coastline, putting in the extra dollars in it so that if you do have a hurricane and you have tidal action going across that road, it don't wash out, which has happened. So resiliency is not exclusively tied to climate change. Climate change is one of the things that's in his portfolio. So now what's in this thing that they did, I don't know, but I wanted to point that out.
Okay, can we move along? Jesse, how about you tonight?
Yes, sir. First of all, for the 3 houses, staff, that's such a big deal. So for the folks at home who saw us briefly talk about the fact that we got 3 homes that are going to get bought up, that's such a big deal. So we're talking the flood-prone area of Bonita Springs that's been underwater 3 times. So we participated in a buyback program, and we have the first 3 houses. So hopefully we can get some other folks out of those because again, they've been underwater 3 times. So as many of those as we can get out, the better. So I'm excited to see that moving forward. Ordinance, I'm thinking about 2 ordinances, and I just kind of wanted to bring these up to you guys. And if there's violent opposition, just let me know now, and I won't bother staff with it. But the first one, it has to do with septic, and it is in regards to, I would like to consider the potential of not allowing septic in new development in the city. So that's one. And the second one is an ordinance, really it's a kind of clean up the building code regarding the waivers. So if you remember a while back, one of the nonprofits that's built in District 2, who is that they tried to do they tried to utilize the waiver, which doesn't allow for complete streets.
Habitat for Humanity.
So, for example, when Habitat came to see us and they were talking about wanting to utilize the waiver, and then everybody's mad at Habitat, like, well, why don't they want to do a complete street? It's really our fault because we allow for the waivers within our building code. So what I'd like to do is talk to staff about ways to clean up the building code to prevent any situations whereby people can use our own code against us, thereby not allowing us to do complete streets. So those would be 2 ordinances I'd like to talk to staff about. I don't see anybody violently shaking their head. So
Excuse me, what was the first one?
It's septic to sewer. I'm sorry, septic. So on new developments, new projects, we would prevent septic as part of the plan. They have to go straight to sewer. So if they're going to build, they have to go straight to sewer.
Is that gonna be legal?
I think I'd like to have a clarification of what we already have in the code and sort of the reasoning behind that.
Yeah, well, we generally have, as most communities do, a mandatory connection requirement. But let me clarify. We can always look at this issue, and the council has directed staff in the past to consider looking at ways to help expand
The water,
sewer
the
to
sewer, yeah.
areas that have been served by septic because there is no available sewer. The issue really becomes is at some point you're going to have areas that sewer is not available, that septic has to be an option. And so I think there's probably still room to talk on this issue. I don't, unless the councilman's suggesting that it's an absolute prohibition.
No, not at all. I just think I think it's prudent for us as we look around and we start to see ourselves build out and there's not much direction to go other than east, we can start looking at solutions to, septic, the new septic, I'm not even worried, we don't have to worry about it for 20 years. But what I'm worried about is 20 years from now and trying to clean up all the spots that we're gonna allow in. So my thought is if you're gonna come here and do business here, you should have the business to get on sewer. And then we don't have to go back later and clean up after ourselves for allowing septic, because septic is one of the few things that we can collectively work on as a council in regards to water quality, and another area that we can do that. And I think this, and the reason I bring it up, I mean, think about, we had a project where I brought this up before about 4 or 5 months ago, and my issue was that they were going to be putting in these new developments short-term septic before they decided to get to the point of sewer. My thought was, if we're going to let them build, they should be at a point where they can go to sewer. And if they can't go to sewer, then they can't build yet, and that's fine. And when they can come back to us, because it's going to create a situation whereby we're now going behind people and cleaning it up. So we don't all have to agree on it, but I just wanted to bring those up.
I sort of disagree with you, and I sort of agree with you, because we've had a policy here at the council since I've been on that we prefer connection to sewers. But I don't approve of, or I don't think it's practical or beneficial to a community to have rigid rules, because we can't anticipate every possibility, and that's why we have flexibility in the code. So I think as a council, in fact, I've spoken to John Jenkins about it. We're supposed to have a presentation by them that someday, if we ever have the time to do that, so we can better understand the septic issue, if there is one, in Bonita Springs, because I don't think we have full knowledge. So I'd be very much in favor of having a conversation about it, but I would not be in favor of having an arbitrary regulation proposed by the council until we have this more global understanding of what the problems are and how we need to fix them. Where we already have large units where they're unseptic, I think I'm in favor of facilitating the connection to them and helping people, because that costs so much money. Right. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars to communities that can't afford to do that. So it's a total policy rethink that I think the council, it's time for it. So thank you for bringing it up, but I don't totally agree with the direction you're going.
No, I can pump the brakes on an actual ordinance. I just wanted to see if you guys would be open to it.
Let's put it on, we at the council, this is not having anything to do with your proposal. I think we would profit by choosing topics where we can just have a conversation like we're having right now. We should set aside time for those kinds of conversations about concepts that we haven't clarified. So thank you for being, and what was the second one? I forgot.
Oh, it's on, let's see. Oh, cleaning up the building code so that people can't file for waivers, so that they can't do complete streets. Because we allow them to do it, and then we're mad at them when they file the waiver, and it's like, they're a nonprofit, of course they're gonna file the waiver.
There was a different reason why we were mad at them, but I do not think it's appropriate to have too much rigidity in the code, because we can't anticipate everything. But maybe that particular one is one that we should look at, and I'm not against. Certainly, since I've been on since 2016, I asked us to redo our entire code, but we've been doing it piecemeal because it's so expensive to do that. So we could always look at things. Okay, but thank you for bringing both of those
Absolutely.
forward.
So, and I'll let me just jump through here. I'm gonna have Jane reach out to each one of you. I had a really good tour of the real-time operations center for the Lee County Sheriff last week. It was very, very impressive if you haven't been there. I'd like to encourage all of you to. I talked to the sheriff and everybody else there, and I said, this was such a great opportunity. I'd like to have the rest of council get individual tours of this as well, if they would be interested. And they said absolutely, they would like to do that. So Jane will reach out and try to set those up. And if you guys are open to it, you can do it in an hour, but it's mind blowing the stuff you'll see in there. Next, Fiesta Bonita. I'm really excited for the video. I'm not sure if some of y'all participated in that, but I haven't seen the final product, but I am excited to, and I know that's going to be coming soon. The Rally for Clean Water at Riverside that went on this weekend by the Realtors was absolutely awesome. They really set the framework for what I think is going to be a great annual event. So I'm glad that we are participating in that. On a federal side, I'll just really quickly, we're working on NFIP, National Flood Insurance Program. A lot of stuff, specifically including a risk rating 2.0 delay act that Rubio's doing on the Senate side. We're trying to figure out what that might look like in the House side. It's problematic for us to do it because we're Republicans and they're not letting any House bills on the floor if you're Republican. So we're speaking to colleagues around the state who might be sympathetic to where the state of Florida is on NFIP to see if we can be helpful there. Additionally, as LOSUM goes, you all saw the email yesterday, but the sensitivity runs seem to be, there are hundreds of them that would put us in a better situation than we are under LORS 08, which is the current lake operation schedule. So what we are doing is encouraging them to use one of those hundreds of models as the backbone of how this is going to work moving forward. And we'll know more about that on the 23rd when we meet with them. But I would say that there's options that would put us in a better situation than we've been in 20 years as far as water goes, in regards to allocation of harmful releases. So that's great. And we also sponsoring a secondary sanctions bill on Cuba, HR 557, which puts additional sanctions on the Cuban regime in regards to defense, security, intelligence, and further puts them in the same place that we have Iran and some other bad actors around the world, in hopes to give the Cuban people the help that they need. And last, I just wanted to briefly mention that we have the Bonita Springs Wildcats, our soccer team, our Youth 10. I've been there, and Week 7 tomorrow, coming up next week. They're about to be undefeated. They're undefeated right now. So they're 6-0. So our Youth 10 is 6-0. I ordered a jersey, and I will be there next week to see if we can go 7-0. So right here at Marnie Fields, we got 7-0, the Bonita Springs Wildcats. So good job, guys.
Very good. Chris, you had something to say earlier?
Yeah, I was reflecting upon what Jesse was talking about with sewer and septic and what Amy was talking about. One of the things that I've been talking about to some economists and statisticians at FGCU and others is the continuing growth rate of Bonita Springs. If you do some math based upon the current growth rate of about 3.9%, by 2031 we'll be a city of 92,000 people. Our density will increase from 1,676 people per square mile to 2,700 people per square mile. And so I think this whole conversation about where we go with sewers and septic's I'm not wanting to make the code rigid, but I think we have to take into account things like sewers and use of septics as we plot what the growth is going to be in Southwest Florida. I'll make one other point, if I could. I don't know if you saw in the paper last week, but Allstate in Northbrook, Illinois is closing their headquarters. And that's because they found that they are just as productive, they're growing their revenue line just as fast, allowing people to work at home. Amazon is already allowing their mid-level warehouse managers to work from home. And my favorite firm, PricewaterhouseCoopers, announced last week that 40,000 of our professional staff can now work from home. Well, if I've got to, if I'm working for Allstate and I can work from home, home can be in northern Chicago suburbs, or it can be in Southwest Florida. And when you think about the tax situation, I'm forecasting over the next 10 years personally that what I call the Great Southern Migration out of the high tax northern states down here. So I just think we have to keep in mind what the long-term growth trends are going to be to this area. And when we're talking about infrastructure such as sewers and roads, we need to understand that there's going to be a huge impact. So I appreciate your thought on it, and I also appreciate Amy's thought on it. It's something we need to think about and discuss as a council.
Okay, Mike? Okay, Amy, would you like to add to it?
Well, just two quick statements. I want to say that I did participate, as some of the other council, including you, in the Southwest Florida Pastors Association prayer meeting that they had at the band shell, where we were all supported, everyone who is an elected official, including in addition to our first responders, to help us to do our job as best as we can and do what's right for our community. And that was just really nice that we got people from all over, all different races, even religions, and different socioeconomic levels, and we were in unity in trying to do what's best for our community. So it just felt really good to me, and I appreciate the effort that was done there. And I did attend a Veterans Committee meeting where we just finalized our plans for Veterans Day. So I hope everyone is counting on participating then. And that's it.
Okay, Amy? Yeah, Amy.
Laura.
Laura, I'm looking right at you and calling you the wrong name. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I want to again thank Governor DeSantis for staying strong against mandating the COVID-19 vaccination. And since the height of the pandemic in April of 2020, Florida has grown almost 1 million jobs. We're one of the lowest in the nation as unemployment, but there's lots of jobs out there, so folks get off the couch and get to work. I too really enjoyed that church meeting on Saturday. Clean water was also very informative and interesting. They had a guppy school for little kids, and they could go fishing, and they put a magnet. But sometimes they got plastic, and they go, "Oh, I want to fish," you know. And so they were teaching them, be careful what you do with your lunchbox, you know, that you finish, and straws, and a whole bunch of information that was very fascinating. Little fish that eat mosquito larvae, you know, so, and they're indigenous, so it's a good thing. I want to thank the Bonita Springs and Real Estate and Estero Real Estate and FDCU, City of Bonita Springs, Mercedes, and others who offered that event on Saturday. And hopefully it's going to be an annual. Band was pretty good too. And they even taught what not to plant in the water. I see this really pretty hyacinthine. I'm like, oh, cool, I love them. The worst weed in the world. Like, I am so glad I read further. But it was a busy week. Oh, and the Rotary laid mulch and painted the Bonita Springs Elementary School. So, did a great job.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to, yes, Fred?
I'd like to tack on an idea with what Councilman Purdom proposed on the septic tanks and Amy's comment. Yeah, there are situations where it's almost economically impossible for, like if a guy wants to tear his house down and build a new one, the septic tank and nearest sanitary sewer is a quarter-mile down the road. It's cost more money to extend it than probably what he was going to do in his house. But I think what we should do is put something in our code that says if you are in an area where you have standing water in the wet season, you've got to mound up your leaching field so it's above the water line, because that's where you get, especially if that happens to be in a wet area, if it's relatively close to the Imperial River, Spring Creek, Oak Creek, the Gulf and all that. I think that would do a lot. That's my comment.
Okay, Fred, thank you. You have one house to 10 acres in the DRGR, and we've defended our DRGR. You're not gonna have a sewer company all come into the DRGR for one house on 10 acres of land. So the flexibility of having a septic tank, or another possibility would be have a bulk tank where the owner would have it pumped, and that would take the sewer out of the ground to take it to the whatever. But saying you gotta have a hook up to the sewer system would eliminate all these people in the DRGR, and we're gonna keep continuing to, I hope so, defend our rights to the development in the DRGR. Let's see, anything else? I think that's all I have. Anything else coming up? Seeing none? Are we,
Motion to approve the minutes?
Minutes.
Public
Minutes.
comment. Motion to approve. Second.
Second, approve, any other? Yes, Amy?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Councilman Corey?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba?
Aye.
Councilman Purdon?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Steinmeier?
Aye. Okay, now we got public comment. Anybody that's been here all day? Yes, sir. Thank goodness. We got long-winded today.
I thank you for Wi-Fi, because it actually has been a very productive morning on row 6, seat 18 back there. Good morning, Mayor, Council, and staff. As you are aware, the Outreach Committee decided to host a virtual and not an in-person celebration of Fiesta Bonita Springs this year once again, and we decided to celebrate through a video. To satisfy the agreement within our fiscal year, we have already aired the Spanish version of this video on 3 TV networks, including Univision, Azteca, and Estrella. But we have purposely paused the English one from airing so that we could have an opportunity to preview this video and invite you as well as the members from the Outreach Committee. So you should have received an email invitation from me, as we're going to host a small preview party here at City Hall on Tuesday, November 2nd at 6 p.m. And I hope that everyone here can make it. And if you would be so kind to let me know if you are or not coming to my email address, because we are going to serve some food. 6 p.m.
There's a public meeting with Barron Collier Corporation on the bamboo property at 5:30 at the public library in Bonita Springs on November 2nd.
So Barron Collier is a developer that we've contracted with for the.
Well, that's the date that I had asked for, and as of last night, I was told that that was a clear date.
That shouldn't.
We can move it. I mean, it's no problem. It's just that.
I think everybody wants to go to that.
Yeah, sure. I have no problem. I have no problem moving it.
Wants to have a say on that bamboo court, and I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Andres, why don't I have Laura Taylor reach out
Perfect.
we'll coordinate, and then we'll help is why don't we do a quick individual call to council members to get a majority of a free date, so that works with you guys too.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's totally fine with me.
What is the fall off date for you? When does it happen?
It's really, well, here's the thing. I haven't aired the English version because I don't want it to be like yesterday's newspaper for when we see it.
Right.
So it's really up to us. We have already aired in Spanish, but social media in English is being held until we can all see it and enjoy it a little bit.
They've met the criteria of the contract, so now it's at a moment of what works best scheduling wise.
Yes.
Now, wasn't there supposed to be a festive at the park?
That's, yeah,
So
due to
may-
COVID, it went
And that's been canceled?
because of COVID, and they did it as a video. So next year it'll go live again, like it did.
Okay, so we don't have anything on Saturday?
Nope, it'll just be the video.
Okay, I was planning on going to it, all right.
Trust me too.
Next year,
Very good. Thank you. Any other public comment? Anything else come before us?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're gonna be out of here. Thank you. Adjourn.